Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde, or depending on where you are, good morning. This is Jeff Morrison from the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association here. We just first of all wanted to say thank you for joining today's webinar, and hope that everyone has been having a great start to 2020. Just by way of quick background, of course, as you all know, this webinar was a product of the new CHRA Affordable Homeownership Working Group that was created in 2019. We're extremely thrilled that all of you have joined that working group. And in part, the reason for creating that group was the announcement in the federal budget of 2019 of the creation of what came to be known as the Shared Equity Mortgage Program, or SEMP, which was the $100 million program intended to increase capacity in the affordable homeownership space. So one of the first requests that the working group asked was if CHRA, through this working group, could provide more insight and information on the creation and execution of SEMP. And so that's what this webinar is. I know since its initial announcement and passage by Parliament that CMHC has been working to set up the parameters of the program. There was probably a bit of a delay given the federal election in the fall, but now that that's over with, we're now in a position, or CMHC is now in a position to share more information on the program, and hence this webinar. So I, first of all, again, just want to say thank you for taking part. I want to thank CMHC for agreeing to do this. Nous sommes très heureux que SCHL peut faire cet événement cet après-midi. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Dominica, who will provide a bit of logistical information about this webinar, and then we'll introduce our speakers from CMHC, and we'll take it from there. So Dominica, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jeff. As Jeff said, good afternoon to everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dominika Krzemińska and I'm the Director of Programs and Strategic Initiatives here at CHRA. Thanks to everyone for joining us. So before we begin, I'll give a brief overview of the webinar technology and introduce our agenda and speakers for this afternoon's presentation. I guess Jeff already introduced the agenda. So today's webinar is in real time. You should now be able to see a title screen of today's presentation and be able to hear me via your computer speakers, headset, or through your phone if you've chosen to dial in. You're currently all muted, and we do this to minimize background noise. If you do wish to ask questions, you may type them in the chat box on the webinar control panel at any time during the presentation, and we'll be able to address your questions in French and English at the end of the webinar. So as Jeff said, today's webinar topic is the Shared Equity Mortgage Provider Fund, an update on it by CMHC. Today's webinar will provide an update and also is an opportunity for working group members to have their questions answered. We're joined today by affordable housing specialists at CMHC, Michelle McMaster and Hernan Angulo, who's going to be joining in a little bit. He's just having some technical difficulties. So I'm going to now pass on the presentation to Michelle, and she'll be able to take us through the presentation. Thank you so much and welcome, Michelle.
Thanks, everybody. Happy to be here. Hernan is having some real troubles with his computer access, so I'm hopeful that he'll be able to join us. But if not, it's my pleasure to take you through our presentation. Et je peux répondre aux questions en français, mais le problème, c'est que notre plan était que Hernan fera les réponses en français. Donc, pour moi, j'ai pas le vocabulaire juste. Donc, également, je peux répondre aux questions en général, mais peut-être que je dois ajouter des mots en anglais s'il n'arrive pas avant la fin de la présentation. Alors, acceptez en avance mes regrets pour ça. So I will be doing the presentation in English. Hernan has the French deck, that's what I was just saying, so that I haven't got all the exact vocabulary for the French piece, because that was his half of the presentation. So nevertheless, let's start talking about the Shared Equity Mortgage Providers Fund program. It's really an interesting one. So over the next 5 years, we've got $100 million in low-cost financing. So it's a $5 million initiative, $100 million. We are looking to create 1,500 new units of housing and reach 1,500 first-time home buyers. There are two streams to the funding, and we'll take you through both of them, a pre-construction stream and a shared equity mortgage stream. So the program's objectives. We want to find a way to offer low-cost financing options to eligible providers of shared equity mortgages. So the overall goal, of course, is to help Canadians afford home ownership. So we'll do this through improving the affordability. That's what this program will do, while minimizing household debt obligations for first-time home buyers. We'll attract new providers of shared equity mortgages and certainly hope to encourage additional supply of housing. The program eligibility requirements. It is open to nonprofit organizations, be they public or private, to all different levels of government, Indigenous organizations, and also to for-profit organizations. So this is really important. How do you qualify? You have to be able to demonstrate that you have the capacity to fulfill the loan repayment obligation, that the organization is financially sound and has the requisite authority, experience, and capability and resources to administer a shared equity program. There are two streams, as I said, to the program. We have the pre-construction stream and the shared equity mortgage stream. So we'll take a look at each one now. The pre-construction stream. The amount of money here that you can get with each annual application is $4 million per project. The maximum loan term is 5 years, and the rate could be fixed or floating. That's up to you as applicant to decide how you prefer to have the rate managed. The loan is closed to prepayment. The shared equity mortgage stream is $5 million per proponent borrower each year. So you could make the application and have it would apply to different projects. The maximum loan term is 5 or 10 years and a maximum 25-year amortization. In terms of the rate, it's the same issue. It's up to you if you prefer a fixed or floating rate. And you must make partial principal repayments as the home purchasers repay their shared equity mortgage. And so you remit the payments you've received on a quarterly basis to CMHC. Now, at least one of the borrowers under this stream, one of the homeowners, has to fit the federal definition as a first-time home buyer. So that generally is obviously first-time home buyers, people who have never owned a house, but there are some other circumstances. Somebody who has, had a divorce, different circumstances where in the past they may have had some ownership, but for all intents and purposes, they don't have the equity or the property now. So we're looking for the first-time home buyers, and the purchasers must have 5% from their own resources. So you can't put all the down payment down. They will need to bring something to the table. So the criteria. The shared equity mortgage provider is only permitted to offer shared equity mortgages to home purchasers who meet these criteria. So for the pre-construction, the purchasers who qualify have to meet 5% down payment from their own resources, and they would actually qualify under the first-time homebuyers program rather than just the pre-construction program. The applicant is you people, the housing providers who are building. And on a case-by-case basis, we will figure out how many units will be targeted towards first-time home buyers, and that will affect the funding pool available to your pre-construction costs. And the shared equity mortgage stream, the second stream, your purchasers will have to satisfy the minimum down payment requirements and meet the Government of Canada's first-time homebuyer qualifications, and obtain the first mortgage financing from a qualified lender. So that is where the first chunk of the mortgage comes, the first mortgage. The second mortgage is what the shared equity stream can help support. So in terms of how much the individual can get from you in a shared equity second, for the first $500,000 of the unit price, we will fund 5% of that amount. The lending value for the over 500,000, we will do up to 10%. So that's sort of the basic parameter. The program caps out at about $560,000 per purchase, per house. The next question is the budget. So just to give you a sense, it's always helpful, I find, to understand how this program ramps up. So last year, we started with $5 million available in each stream. This year, we're looking at 11.25, which brings us to, a total of in the, oh my goodness, my mind has just gone blank on that, 22,500 or 22,500,000 for the mortgages, and that remains consistent for the remainder years of the program. So there's a few overall conditions that are worth keeping in mind. You've probably heard under the National Housing Strategy that CMHC allows stacking of different funding streams. Most often, your members will, your peers will come to us and look for instance, seed funding and then co-investment funding. You can stack those streams, but you cannot stack seed funding with SEMP funding, and that's because the stream 1 of SEMP does cover pre-construction costs. There's also, this is a bit of a nuance, there's no stacking within SEMP. So for instance, if you get the stream 1 pre-construction financing on a building, you cannot get shared equity mortgages under stream 2 for that same building. You can, however, get the first-time homebuyers initiative for your purchasers. They can get that through their lender, so they can still get a shared equity mortgage. It's just not under this particular stream of government funding. And the third detail is that the homebuyer cannot use both a second mortgage from the shared equity mortgage program here that we're talking about and the first-time home buyers, because that would essentially be double dipping on the second mortgage. So they can only come into the one program. So it's a fairly straightforward program. We're very much interested in accepting applications. There's a goodly amount of funding available, and the key thing though is to be able to demonstrate ability to manage these resources and to repay. Alors, il me fera plaisir, si vous avez des questions en français, d'en répondre. Mais comme j'ai dit, je n'ai pas exactement le vocabulaire ici parce que je pensais que Hernan serait ici avec sa terminologie. En tout cas, it would be my pleasure to take any questions that you have. That's the high-level overview of the Stream 1 and Stream 2 of the Shared Equity Mortgage Program.
Great, thank you so much, Michelle. And I see that Hernan is here. He's just
wonderful, excellent.
He's muted in the audience, so I'll find him in a little bit. I'm just going to pass on the mic to Jeff, who will start us off with questions, and then I would encourage everyone in the audience to type in their questions, and as they're being typed in, we will read them. And I see that a couple of them already are up there. So we'll start with Jeff and then we'll move on.
So first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I actually had two fairly straightforward questions. The first is with respect to the interest rate on the pre-construction side of it. Could you indicate what that would be? Is it at least a CMHC preferred rate? You mentioned that it's up to the applicant to decide whether it's floating or fixed. Are there some preferential rates around that you could share?
You always get, the best money from from CMHC. The actual rates vary weekly, but we are borrowing this at the Government of Canada's rate. So you're looking significantly. They're quite low rates. I'm sorry, I don't have the confirmation of the actual rate in front of me. I don't know if Hernan does. If not, I'm happy to get it to you after the call, and you can circulate that to your members. I'm sorry, I wasn't given the current.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question, and this is really more logistical, in terms of the application process, is there now a website, or is there a place where people can go to start applying for these two streams?
Absolutely. It's on the CMHC website, and you can fill in the information there, and you will shortly get contacted by an underwriter. And one of the wonderful things with all of the National Housing Strategy programs is we really want to help people get to yes. So if there's missing information or detail, we will try to, work with the provider and see what we can do to complete the gaps and hopefully find the funding for them.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And Hernan, are you unmuted now? I think you may have wanted to add something to that. No, I think the audio is not going to work for Hernan. Sorry about that. Okay, so like I said, if you have questions, please continue typing them in. I see a question here from Ray, and Ray was asking about your comments earlier. Were you referring to, when you were referring to the 5%, was that on the first $500,000 and then 10% above that? Or is it 25% on the first 500,000?
No, it's 5% of the first 500,000 of the house value. That's 500,000 in the lending value, and 10% of the remainder of the lending value.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. If you have further question to that, you can definitely type that in. Our audience is a little bit shy today, so I'm going. I think Jeff has another question while people think of questions and type them in.
Well, just another question with respect, and it was regard to one of your last comments regarding stacking. So I understand that the two streams can't be stacked, but you mentioned that there could be stacking with other NHS programs. Could that potentially include FCHI and the extension of rental subsidies?
I have not heard about that. I mean, typically the stacking would be, we have a lot of projects where there may be a piece with insurance, a piece with co-investment, there may be seed on the deal. I'm not aware of that because the way that money is flowing is somewhat different. In this case, though, the key things to keep in mind are that you cannot have seed, because essentially the pre-construction money, which is a lot more than seed funding in any case for your project, is separate. And you can't stack the stream 1 and stream 2 on the same project. You can, however, and we do have applicants who are applying for both stream 1 and stream 2. So if it is a developer who's got 2 buildings under construction, they could apply for the pre-construction for 1, and maybe as they're getting closer to marketing the second building, applying for the stream 2 or the shared equity mortgages on that. Your first stream building, though, could get the pre-construction up $4 million on it, and then your purchasers, you can provide the information on the first time homebuyers initiative, so when they go to a lender, they can then get access to some down payment support as well.
Thank you, Michelle. I have another question here. On the borrower eligibility requirements, how are you defining capacity to repay? With that collateral security or some type of net worth requirements?
That's a great question. It's one of those things, the underwriting is very case specific, so it depends on the particular provider. Certainly, if you've had experience running a shared equity mortgage program in the past, that would be a great advantage. But otherwise, we would look for ways to demonstrate the ability to manage funds and repay. So it could be basically a lot of different things, whatever the particular organization, how would each applicant say, this is why we are able to do this, because we have a track record of managing you know, whatever sorts of funding, or we have a certain pool of equity, or we have other partners in this project with us that demonstrate the, you know, the viability of it. It depends on the particular deal. And like I said, we are interested in working with people to help find the right answers and find the solution that to get this money spent effectively to better house Canadians.
Great, thank you. And as people are typing in their questions, I have one. How many applicants have you had thus far for the first year of the funding for the $5 million that you have for 1920?
We have 5 million in each stream.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
And,
so for the
so 10 million. And I'm not honestly sure. It's not the hugest number, so we're glad to talk up the program and get more interest. We've had, you know, probably a handful, not a huge number at this point. It's not the biggest pool in the world, though, of organizations that are interested or adept at this this style of funding. But if people are interested in getting into the space, that's where you know, we want to look at that seriously.
Great, thank you. Next question is about whether you will be okay with us sharing the actual slides of this presentation with the participants on this webinar. We'll be sharing the recording, but are you okay with the PDF
Absolutely.
of the slides? Okay.
Yes, certainly. It would be our pleasure. Yep.
Great. And
there's more information. I was just going to say that check out the CMHC website. We have a lot of good information there. In addition to, you know, a slide type thing. It's a little less detailed than some of the handout information. So by all means, please check there. Everything you need for the program is on our website, cmhc.ca.
Great, thank you. I have another question. So if people are interested in moving into this space or exploring moving into affordable home ownership through something like SEMP, I know that you said that you are willing to, you know, to speak to people and to provide them with all the information. Is there any sort of, I'm going to say training, that's not the right word, but that additional information for people who are maybe not as familiar with this space to move into it, to help facilitate that?
Well, I think the first step is, you know, I am one of a network, as is my colleague Hernan. We are part of the national network of specialists in multi-unit client solutions. And that's basically what we do, is we meet with organizations that are interested in applying for different CMHC programs under the National Housing Strategy, and our insurance as well, of course. So we can look at the information that each provider brings and say, you know, this you would likely qualify, or you would likely not, or here's what you need to do to close the gap. It's a huge responsibility for providers to contemplate this area, and so we will work with individuals. Now, this program, there's, as I say, there's not the hugest volume. It is really targeting a certain niche of the nonprofit housing provider market. But we are, you know, available to meet, look over the details of a site or just a general application, and help people figure out what next steps would be for them. That's always the tough thing, you know, with housing, as everyone on the call knows. Every building is different. Every circumstance is different. It's like, it would be great if we could, you know, generalize and say do ABC and that's it. I mean, we can condition what we need to achieve in terms of results to really help people get into the ownership space and to help organizations successfully build new buildings. So we can sort of condition that piece of it. But in terms of an actual, when you get right down to the nitty gritty of each application, every single one is different. You know, all day long I look at pro formas and applications, and I've never seen any two the same. I even had one case where a developer was attempting to build exactly the same building they had built, but do it on a different site, and the pro forma didn't work for a whole bunch of specific reasons to the site and the municipality, et cetera, et cetera. So it's it's always custom. So we're happy to talk and try to find a solution.
All right, another question. Would applicants using the second stream or purchasers buying with the first-time home buyers initiative need to secure high ratio mortgage insurance?
Yes, we would. They would need to have mortgage financing from a CMHC approved lender.
Okay, great. So I don't see any other questions popping up. If they do, as I'm saying my my thank yous, I will definitely read them out. So if you have some last minute questions that you've been thinking about and didn't know how to phrase, you have time to write them in. I wanted to thank Michelle and sorry about Hernan not being able to.
Know. We lost him somewhere.
Yeah, he's lost in the audience, but I know he's here. He's just
I know he's
technical difficulties.
Actually, joys of technology.
Exactly. There is actually a question that just came up, so I'll read that before I say my my goodbyes. So, can the pre-construction stream be used for site acquisition?
I don't believe so. But I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I have not been asked that. Typically, people come to CMHC when they already have the site. Often our funding will take out land mortgages, but I want to get you a more precise answer in this circumstance. So I'm sorry, I don't have that information right now, but I will close the loop with you, Dominica, afterwards.
Sure, yeah, if you send me that information, I'll be able to share it with the, with the person who asked, but also just in general with the participants and the Affordable Homeownership Working Group. That's great, thank you.
Terrific.
So yeah, so that's all the time that we have for today's webinar. Well, it's not all the time we have, but it's all, if there's no more questions.
It's all the webinar we have.
Exactly. It's not, short and sweet is sometimes fantastic. People are busy and need to get back to their day-to-day. So I'd like to, again, thank the audience for participating and to our speaker, Michelle. Today's webinar recording will be shared with CHRA's Affordable Homeownership Working Group members in the coming days, as well as any additional participants on this call today. And I'd also like to mention that we will have another working group call in the next month or two. We're just going to be sending out a couple of proposed dates to everyone to land on a date. And then also a reminder that the working group will be meeting face-to-face at CHRA's National Congress in Saskatoon, which is happening April 20th to the 23rd, and the meeting will be happening on the 23rd. So if you're planning on joining us at the conference, super early bird prices end on February 1st, which is coming up this weekend. So register on CHRA's website. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Michelle, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.